Welcome back to the next part of our Ualbany Way and Path to Health and Happiness. On the last one, we talked about mindset as one of our paths, and now we will talk about the connection and mastery portions of the Ualbany Way. Ualbany Way connection is an important element of and is connected to the perma positive relationships, and it's really talking about our need and desire and part of our well-being and happiness being our social involvement with others, the way we feel included, and our ability to build positive relationship with peers and faculty and staff as what brings us in a way to flourish the way that we would like to be with others. And a good example of this is a question for you, which is that is there someone in your life you would be comfortable calling at 4 in the morning to tell your troubles to? And if there is, believe it or not, you will likely live longer than for someone for whom the answer is no. And really, what this is getting at here is that the question, would you be able to call someone at 4 in the morning to tell your troubles to, is filling in for a answer to the question of whether you have positive relationship in your life. Because if you do, those are the individuals you would probably likely be able to call at any time, and they'd be willing to answer it, and they'd be willing to talk to you. And what we have found is that there is actually a correlation between having those positive relationships and the length of your lifespan. That those who have positive relationships live longer and are healthier, and they have greater well-being than those that don't. Part of how we're going to talk about positive relationships is we're going to really need to talk about the ways in which we can create and build those. And one of the most significant ones for those is for us is the ability to listen. And that listening is an art, right? And that it's something that it helps us. And that people don't always need advice. They just really need someone to listen, to hold a hand, and to understand them. And that this ability to do that is something that really helps us build those positive relationships. We know that the individuals who listen to us the most are usually the ones that we build the most positive relationships with. Let me give you an example of ways in which a tip that you can do in terms of building a more positive relationship. And I'm going to give you a scenario with 3 possible solutions, and you can kind of give me some sense of which one you think are the best ones, although you might find it to be a little obvious. So, for example, my wife came home from work the other day, and she was very excited, and she walked in and she was like, honey, I just got promoted at work. Isn't that great? And I was like, wow, that's great, honey. And what's for dinner? How do you think that went over? Probably not very well, as you could imagine. That it wasn't incredibly empathetic in what I just said. So let me see if you'd like the second version better. So my wife comes home. She says, hi, honey, I just got promoted at work. Isn't that great? And I was like, wow, that's great and wonderful. You deserve it. That's amazing. I am so proud of you. I am really, really proud of you. And maybe we can go out to dinner tonight. Does that sound a little better? I assume that you believe it does. Of course it is. It's much nicer. But what if I told you there's actually a third way that might be even better for the way for us to build positive relationships? And that third way would be this. It would be my wife comes home from work and she says, hey, honey, I just got promoted at work. And I say, wow, that's great. You deserve it. Where were you when they told you? What were you doing when you found out? Why do you think that asking questions of that nature is actually the best way for us to build positive relationships? At the end of the day, what it really is about is asking that person to relive their experience. And we know that people who relive their experiences actually feel build those positive emotions, come back to them as they are reliving them, and they're also embedding them more deeply in their memory and consciousness. And the other piece to that is that now when they're reliving that experience is that I am actually going to be a part of now that reliving, so that an experience that happened without me is relived with me in that experience, so that I get to then experience and be part of those emotions and reactions. So it's a way for us to build empathy between individuals by asking them to relive those experiences. This is why we love to hear stories. This is why we ask people to tell stories. This is why we enjoy stories, and that storytelling is a great way to build positive relationships. So the ability to listen, to build positive relationships, and ask people to relive experiences. So we want to, A, if possible, is to live experiences with others, but B, if not, reliving them and storytelling are great ways to build positive relationships. So the part about if they can't relive them, we would like you to be part of it. So the other part of this is that when we share pleasant experiences with others, we enjoy them much more than we would alone. This is something in which it may seem obvious, but it's not always obvious that you would enjoy something yourself, but if you do it with others, you'll enjoy it even more. And this has been research based, so that building that experiences also increases your well-being. So enjoying things with others, sharing things with others. Many of you have probably heard over time that if you can share experiences and not things, that these are ways for you to build social relationships. So here are the 5 ways to better social relationship tips that we're going to give you through the Ualbany way with your path to health and happiness. So first one is to listen. You want to pay attention. You want to not judge, right? You want to have them relive experiences by giving them active, nurturing responses. Tell me more. How did you feel? The way in which we empathize and listen more than we talk is building those relationships. We also want to share experiences and not things with others, as mentioned. We would like you to think about actively participating in someone else's passion, not just asking them to enjoy yours, but going and enjoying the other person's. It's important for us to build relationships in which, even if it's something that I don't necessarily love doing, by spending time with someone else doing those, it's going to help me, because it's going to help me understand their passion. It's also going to provide us things to talk about and relive later on that we both were a part of, and then asking to be compassionate. This may seem simple, but it's not. It's actually very hard for us to do sometimes, is to think about ways in which we can be compassionate for others. If we can do those things, we can build more and better positive relationships. And those are something that's really important for your well-being, as this connection path shows us. The next path that I want to talk about is mastery, which is about scholarship and a positive sense of accomplishment, effort towards setting and achieving goals. It's interesting to us that when you think about mastery as a well-being, right, we think about how much we enjoy when we are able to accomplish something. The example I like to give is, how many of you have ever had the experience of being around someone who's on their phone and all of a sudden they give out an exclamation like, yes, or I did it. And we see that they were playing some video game and they were actually very, very excited about having accomplished whatever they needed to accomplish. Something that really has no significant value in and of itself. But somehow that act of accomplishment, that moment in which you did it, gave you a great sense of wellness in you. And that this is what permanent accomplishment and mastery is really talking about, is that our ability to accomplish something gives us some well-being and some sense of joy when we do that. That's why accomplishment is part of well-being. If you think about video games are brilliant. And if we can think about the way in which video games sort of hook us in, and how we could maybe adapt that to our lives. Video games often are built upon level design, so that each time you play a video game, you're asked to accomplish something. And that accomplishment is rewarded by finishing a level, probably oftentimes providing you with some type of celebratory actions or fireworks. And it also oftentimes means you get a reward for having done it before you move on to the next level. And that this is the kind of activities that actually really get at our sense of accomplishment and keep us coming back, because they keep us saying that we're going to, if you were playing a video game in which it was very frustrating and there was no levels to it and you could only win when you got to the end, most people would never make it to the end. And if you can think about designing that into your own life, so if you're creating this big goal, I would like to lose X amount of weight, or I want to accomplish this thing, or I want to write this paper, it's very, very difficult if you do not build in some of that level design. So how can we set goals, right, that are reachable, plausible, and believable to you, right? So you can set that goal, you can make that plan and get to work and stick to it and reach that goal. But remembering is that the goals It's not the end goal necessarily. It's these level goals. And if we can build these level goals, that we can give ourselves a sense of accomplishment and reward along the way. If I have a 10-page paper, how do I make it so that every single page that I finish or section that I finish, there is some reward and sense of accomplishment for it? Building in that level up design that the video game industry has created, that we know works to build your sense of mastery and accomplishment. And if you think about mastery and accomplishment, there are really three types of goals that you can have that come from psychology, and which is that there are process goals, which is really just executing something. So if you just get up and go to the gym, if you take your health supplements, or you just do something every day, I'm going to write every day, or I'm going to read every day. It doesn't matter how much you do, but that process is a checking off and getting that goal and feeling good about it. There's also performance goals, which is to say that it's going to be, I'm going to do it for so long, 6 hours a day, or I'm going to work out for X amount of minutes. And that these are quantifying the efforts and measure. They're not just about going, but they're about what are you doing while you're there. And then lastly, our outcome goals, which is that when I get to the last part where I won my event, I lost my weight, I scored my grade, and those are outcome goals. Note that process goals are the ones in which they're the easiest for us and the best for accomplishing something. Outcome goals are often not in our control. If it's about winning, it may not be in our control. And performance goals can also be interrupted. So if we can really focus on building process goals that you can then check off, you could accomplish, you can build that sense of accomplishment in your life, so that you can build up to each of those process goals ending up in some kind of outcome that we can cheer on and enjoy. This sense of accomplishment, this feeling like I did it, this learning a new skill, this leveling up on your desires, increases our well-being and makes us feel good about ourselves. Too often we go into New Year's resolutions and we feel like a failure when we're not able to accomplish them. Which instead, if we focus more on those process goals, and those are the things that not only make us feel good about accomplishing something, but make it much more likely for us to reach those outcome goals by having reached those process goals. So 5 ways to better mastery for you is going to be to create a new and compelling belief about yourself. If you need to believe, right, that you can do something, that you can learn something new, that you can accomplish that. If you think about someone who runs a marathon, you have to believe that you can do a marathon before you might even start doing it. Most people don't run a marathon because while they're running it, they think that they're just enjoying the journey. Most people who run a marathon are excited to be done, to have done it. That sense of accomplishment is so compelling for them that they are willing to put in the training. So you can create a new and compelling belief that you can do it. And that can spur you on as long as you're creating those process goals and leveling up. And then finding some interest in growing passion. Some of us think that we need to be passionate about everything for us to really put the hard work in it. The research really shows us is that most of us aren't sort of built in with the passion for items. We actually are built in with interests, and that our focus on those interests ultimately grows that passion, so that you can actually find whatever you're interested in and eventually grow passion in those areas. Number 3 is to set the small goals and level up, which we've discussed numerous times in here. And then thinking about going back to our previous conversations about failing forward, embracing challenge, and cultivating hope. That these are really important items that if you're connecting those different mastery paths along with your engagement, and these are parts in which you can be more successful and happier. So this path, this mastery path, is about using accomplishment, about setting yourself to be successful by setting small goals and leveling up and getting some sense of accomplishment along the way before you get to your final goals. And then these are the paths that 2 more paths that are part of the Ualbany way and your path to happiness. Thank you very much, and we'll be on to part 5 in just a moment. Thank you.